Hello, Sounders. Good to talk to you. I hope you're enjoying summer. I certainly am. I went to Glastonbury, as I do most years. Not Sounders to see Rod Stewart, like all the old geezers. I'm a Neil Young man myself, also a very old geezer. Anyway, he was very good. I had a nice time. I turned off the phone for 4 days. Came back to find nothing had happened in the meantime in PO4. I actually said hello to a couple of Pompey fans, guys in the shirt, in the green fields of Glastonbury. None of the three of us had any Pompey news to relate to one another. It's been a time of rumour, but not developments. So that's what I thought I'd talk about now. Nothing. Nothing happening. Just recently, John Massinho has been able to explain some of the reasons for the lack of incomings, because that's what we're all basically waiting for this summer. It's great to have the lads back and training again and all that stuff. It's nice to see their smiling, sun-tanned faces, but we're looking for new bugs, new purchases. But John Massinho explained the prolonged end to last season, with all sorts of competitions following on from the domestic league campaign. That's slowed everything up. It's kept people thinking of other things rather than buying and selling. The new markets that we're exploring in Europe, again, have some of them different seasons and demands on player time. And then there are all the new European agents that presumably we have to learn about before dealing with them. Often, I gather, more than one acting for the same player. All very confusing. And then multi-languages to wrestle with in communicating with different players and clubs. All these obstacles take time to deal with, to familiarise yourselves with, which you don't encounter when trying to do a deal with Gillingham. But I perceive another problem the manager won't talk about in the wheeling and dealing going on this summer. It's the fact that we're not made of money. I feel Portsmouth Football Club are continuing to apply a set of fiscal rules to our spending which have been adopted since the Eisner family saved the club from destitution, going bust, if you want to say it more clearly. Put aside the massive annual spend on infrastructure, which seems to be paid for by the Eisners every season. Apart from that, we have spending that we allocate and can reasonably expect to use on transfers in a budget based on what can be afforded from a club of our size and stage of development. Other clubs may spend outside of those fiscal rules and it may work for them, but it usually won't. I simply cite as topicality Sheffield Wednesday in this process, and Hull, of course. We don't have to worry about them. We're well run. But it does mean that the summer spend must be a long juggling act in order to satisfy John Massinho's market cravings. Here's a scenario. Pompey have not denied an interest in Pelle Madsen, 23-year-old Danish under-19 cap who plays for Silkeborg in the Danish Superliga. I'm aware it's spelt Silkeborg. I've got a feeling because I did some work for a few years for the Children's Channel, and we worked in Scandinavia, in the Scandinavian countries, and I'm fairly sure that ORG is Aura, so it's Silkeborg. Anyway, it doesn't matter. This interest in Madsen is, for Pompey, since they were last in the Premiership, a major ambition, with a price tag of €2.5 million, we're told, and wanted by clubs in Germany and Italy, as well as rivals in our own championship. It's the sort of ambition we all want Pompey to have. But inevitably, a signing like that eats up a high proportion of the resources our club have in the kitty for transfers this summer. And that's fine, Sounders, because somebody is going to be the most expensive signing of the summer, inevitably. And that could be Pelle Madsen. The problem is, his present club, Silkeborg, are involved in UEFA Conference League qualifiers in July and August, games in which success would likely bring the club a lot of money. And what they seem to be saying is that his fee would have to be even higher in terms of compensation for any risk of failure in that competition in the absence of Pelle Madsen. If, that is, we were to buy him now, the club would want extra. That's what I'm saying. He's already at the top end of Pompey's purchasing budget, I would suggest. So we're not going to pay more than we have to. So we have to exercise patience. But how far can patience take you? Well, nowhere if you end up with no one, but that isn't going to happen. Rich Hughes, Brad Wall, John Mousinho, they will have their list, maybe more than one list, probably several lists, and they'll be in priority order, but not necessarily in order of availability. So this becomes a three-dimensional chess game they're playing. Priorities, availabilities. Do you wait for Madsen, risking loss of other much wanted but lower priority players? I mean, there's another one. It seems to me Nectarios Triantis is, in a way, in a similar situation to Madsen for Pompey. He's an Aussie. Another Aussie. We love him. A Sunderland player who had a very successful loan last season at Hibernian and is wanted as a purchase now by the Hebes and by Blackburn Rovers and, for all we know, other clubs, and he may become available. But he's got a new manager at Sunderland in Regis Lebris, who understandably has said that he wants to get a good look at Triantis in pre-season to decide if he has a place with a Premiership club, which Sunderland, of course, have now become. That's very understandable. To get him in, quite apart from the cost, is going to require patience to see whether he becomes fully available. And that could run into the length of the transfer window. Patience staying with us until August. And the greatest fear about needing patience in a transfer window is that when the patience runs out because the club won't release or the fee and terms have grown in excess of the value you put on the player, you may by then have run out of road on players lower on your lists, whom you still really admired and wanted, but who might well by then have gone elsewhere. As Hamlet says, aye, there's the rub. He does actually say that in Shakespeare. Aye, there's the rub. It's a circus act. Our officials at Pompey are taking part in. The juggling, the high wire walk that Rich Hughes is taking. Not that he's quite built for stuff like that in the trapeze and all those things, but it's a fascinating jigsaw puzzle that he's working on. I sort of hope many years hence Rich Hughes writes a book about his time at Pompey and details the unfolding of his seasonal transfer planning and execution. The ups and downs, the hopes, the aspirations, the disappointments. It would be a quite fascinating read, but somehow I doubt we'll ever get the chance to hear the full story. But we clutch on to little bits and bobs when they come out. Meantime, there are still some Pompey fans saying, let's be honest, we're struggling to get our targets due to financial reasons. In a sort of veiled criticism, I mean, of course it's true. Of course there are financial reasons that make it always difficult. But it shouldn't become a criticism of the Eisners, quite honestly. I do say this every summer, I realise, but they are arguably now the best owners we've ever had, I would say. If we could go back in time and debate that sometime. It's a bit like forgetting the horrors of the Second World War, as is now happening in the fading memories of fathers, mothers, and grandparents. Fading away memories. Pompey fans forget our day in the High Court when we almost lost our club through financial mismanagement. Actually, I wish I hadn't begun this. I think this is fairly crass comparison, Sounders. But I'm gonna leave it in for now. I've said it. But I'm not comparing the horror of World War with the disappointments of transfer negotiations. I promise you I'm not. I'm talking about memory, really, I suppose. I'm acutely aware, as an old geezer, I'm acutely aware that young people now forget, now don't know anything about the war that occurred, if not in our lifetimes, certainly in our parents' lifetimes, many of us. They haven't got a clue what that was like, and you can't. It's very difficult to. They don't really want to hear about it, I suppose. And similarly, and now I'll bring us back to football. But I'm sorry I made that comparison in some respects, because it is a bit ridiculous. But in the small world that I'm now talking about of Pompey Sounders, we shouldn't forget the difficulties that you can get into if you go mad in the transfer market. Golly, I don't know. Have I got away with that? I hope I have, Sounders. Let me move on. On a lighter note, wouldn't you like a player called Griffin Yao at Pompey, Sounders? Yowzers, yes. And it could happen if we're patient. Play up, Pompey.